After the Great Flood, humanity multiplied once more. They carried the memory of water, and the wound of pride still left unhealed. At that time, all people shared one language, one voice, one will, one breath. Genesis chapter 11 verse 1. Fear of scattering drove them to seek safety in closeness, strength in control, permanence in stone and walls. They believed unity itself could save them, forgetting that unity without God easily becomes a chain. The land lacked stone, but they found mud and fire, and decided to shape their own foundation. They baked bricks instead of stone, and used bitumen instead of mortar. A new civilization was mixed with fire and ambition. Genesis chapter 11 verse 3. Their dream was not only a city, but a tower that would rise beyond all limits. What sounded like hope was, deep inside, fear of being forgotten, fear of being scattered, fear of trusting God. They sought a name for themselves, so they would not be dispersed across the earth. Genesis chapter 11 verse 4. Here, sin no longer wore the mask of raw violence. It wore the mask of civilization, self-glorification, self-salvation, self-made holiness. A quiet question lingered among them. If God had already saved them from the waters, why must they now reach the heavens? Yet the answer forming in their hearts was clear. They would no longer wait for God. They would secure themselves. This was pride in its most subtle form, not denying God with words, but excluding Him from the plan of life. The work intensified. Each day the tower rose higher, and so did the hunger for more. When a work becomes an idol, it demands sacrifice, time, truth, and eventually, conscience. Doubt was treated as betrayal. Leaving the work became a crime. Unity ceased to be brotherhood. It became pressure. One shared voice began to suffocate the voice of conscience. Peace faded from their eyes, replaced by the desperate hunger to stand above all else. They believed that once the tower touched the sky, fear itself would disappear. But what they truly desired was not heaven, it was a throne for the self. Scripture says, "The Lord came down to see the city and the tower that humanity was building." Genesis chapter 11 verse 5. God came down, not because He is small, but because humanity believed it had become great. Pride always magnifies itself. The Lord saw one people, one language, and a path that would know no restraint. Genesis chapter 11 verse 6. God was not threatened by the tower. He was concerned for the soul. When humanity makes itself divine, it prepares its own destruction. So the Lord chose to confuse their language, so they could no longer understand one another. Genesis chapter 11 verse 7. This was not random punishment. It was divine surgery, cutting away a pride that had infected all of humanity. Suddenly, familiar words lost meaning. Commands turned into noise. What once connected them now divided them. In a single moment, shared language collapsed into confusion. Authority shouted, but no longer made sense. When language breaks, trust collapses. Allies become threats. Some recognized the chaos not as defeat, but as warning. Others refused to stop, trying to build even as understanding vanished. Pride always tries to continue building on broken ground. The harder it tries, the faster it falls. Hands once united now tore down what others had built. Suspicion replaced cooperation. Fear replaced purpose. They were no longer building a tower, they were building accusations. Power, no longer understood, relied only on fear. And fear inevitably gives birth to violence. The tower that promised heaven became a shadow of arrogance. Scripture says, "The Lord scattered them across the earth, and they stopped building the city." Genesis chapter 11 verse 8. What they thought was nearly complete was, in truth, near collapse. Dispersion was not only geographical, it was internal. The self could no longer hear the other. From that moment, distance entered the human heart. That place was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth. Genesis chapter 11 verse 9. Babel is not merely a story about language. It is a mirror. When humans try to replace God, they lose one another. The greatest tragedy was not the fallen tower, but the fallen heart. The world can still build cities, empires, and monuments, but it cannot build its own salvation. For salvation does not begin with a name for ourselves, but with the name of God. From Babel onward, God changed his way of saving, not through crowds, but through one person. Out of the chaos of languages, God prepared a call, a promise, a covenant. Not so humanity might climb to heaven, but so God could lead humanity home. And in a distant land, one man would hear that call, "Go." From here begins the journey of Abraham, faith instead of pride, promise instead of ambition. Babel teaches a bitter lesson. Unity without God is only an alliance of egos. And the ego, even when speaking the same language, will always fall apart, because it does not know how to love. Yet God does not abandon humanity. He scatters in order to save, divides to prevent self-destruction. One day, he will grant unity again, not by force, but by the Spirit. Not through a tower reaching heaven, but through a church gathering all nations. And what Babel shattered, God will heal, not through human pride, but through his saving love.